Hey there, it's Kelly Donahue Piro, your favorite industry best friend. Well, I'm here to let you know that you've done something great for your agency by joining and listening in on our podcast or watching our YouTube channel. I just want to remind everybody that we're here to help. So if you need anything, drop a comment, go to our website, hang out with our chat, or just contact us. There's a problem in your agency, I got solutions, right? I like to think of it, you got a problem, I'll solve it. But let's get into the content today so that you can improve your awareness and knowledge of solutions that exist to the agency's core challenges.
This allows us to get back to the bare bones basics of who is your client, what are their needs, and do we best protect every piece of their need and their portfolio.
Try to keep everybody just in the habit of doing it, so when it turns back on, you don't have to restart the entire situation at hand. All right. Well, I am very grateful today to be here with Jen Glasgow, who did not do renewal review calls once with APP, but she did it twice at two different agencies, by the way. So it wasn't like a swing and a miss. So Jen, would you like to take a minute, introduce yourself, tell a little bit about your background so that everybody can learn about you?
Of course. We just couldn't get enough of you, Kelly. Let's be honest. So, of course, yes, my name is Jennifer Glasgow. I work with Pariso Insurance as one of their first lines leaders. We have jumped into renewal review calls twice because the process works. We saw what our issue was and we knew what our issue was, and it was retention. And it was finding how are we going to tackle that. And so knowing that my background was in education and in finding the way forward and the learning and the education, I knew working with you helped us set that expectation up at the front, right? We had a strong process. We knew what our next step was going to be. And so it just kind of fell in perfectly. So using that and then, everything that we know about insurance from the different roles that I've played at insurance, I knew we needed the scripts and the opportunities to help overcome the objections. And that's what landed us with using your group twice now.
Yes. Just because you've done it twice and this really is designed for, hey, somebody's starting this project. Maybe the owners come to them and said, hey, this is really critical. We need to get our retention. We have a lot of policies that seem to be tripping us up. And, now the leader has to figure out how to execute it. And maybe you could just start by sharing, because you also had leaders underneath you that were helping in different facets. Some of the initial fears, I guess would be a good word, or they're kind of valid, right? Because you're going into this unknown. So, tell me a little bit about some of the fears maybe your leaders or managers had and, how that kind of played out over the long haul.
Yeah, definitely. So anytime we introduce something that's different and change, we are always going to have the fears. And so our leaders immediately said, well, this isn't going to work. How are we going to be in contact with every single client? And how is this going to support retention as opposed to creating this remarketing need and desire from each one of our clients that we're reaching out to because we're addressing things head on? So we had to talk with them about what was the purpose of this and what does good service look like. And if we didn't address the client proactively, we knew they were going to reactively be calling us. And at that moment in time, they owned the conversation. They were calling in with their concerns. They had their agenda, and we were just having to follow that agenda. And once they got to hear and see what that proactive call was going to look like, it showed our leaders that, okay, this allows us to take it in stride, right? We backed ourselves up. We took the time to dig into who the client is, what they currently have. When was the last time we talked to them? Mm-hmm. So that we went into it fueled with the information we needed. And then on top of that, with the script and the form, the questions were laid out for them. So there wasn't a way to be tripped up with the what ifs. And I think that's what the major fear was how are they going to overcome the question that the client's going to ask when this comes up in the conversation? And so I think what we shared with the leaders to have them overcome that fear was trust the process and try it. And over time, as they got to see the process rolling out, They understood that we could get to each client because there were less reactive calls coming in. Plus, the clients were much happier. So that overall morale between everybody on the team just increased, which is a good feeling.
Yeah, I think it goes back to things I always think about, which is how do you get account managers feeling like they're valuable again? The market conditions have been so difficult with like COVID, and you have a whole bunch of account managers homeschooling kids and trying to do their job. And then we went like right into crazy market conditions where just, people are calling in and it's like catching knives out of the sky. And I think that really did some damage to a lot of account managers where they have a little PTSD of every time the phone rings, somebody's going to be mad at me, And we always try to stress to people, as you know, the people calling in are a certain persona. The people that you call out to that have just paid the increase, don't have payment issues, don't have claims. Like, these are your like most beautiful, gorgeous, most profitable customers. When they call, they're willing to increase their umbrella to a $2 million. Like, they're like, thank you so much for calling. I didn't even know that. Oh, yeah, we did buy a new roof proactively before an insurance claim, right? Like, wow, you saved me $300. That's amazing. Thank you so much. Like, where can I send you flowers? Like,
Yeah.
there's a whole subset of customers that we never talk to because they just pay their premiums, but their life changes and then their insurance doesn't match up because they're not sure what to tell their agent. And I always think that like we have this really profitable book that gets underserved so much. And that's where I get passionate. Like, I want to get to them. Forget the time vampires. Like, they'll always be there. Like, let's just try to sell them something to get off the phone. And then we can go back to the people who we really want to nurture. Was that kind of
I
your experience?
couldn't agree with that more, right? So the individuals who are calling in, they're the time vampires. They're the ones that have made our account managers almost feel like they're just in this service, right? It's just checking off the boxes to get through the day. And they're not in that mentality of being able to serve the client and to provide for them. And so these conversations have allowed our account managers to feel important again, to truly feel like an advisor, right? They're having that opportunity to talk to individuals about what's changed in their life, learn more about their family, learn more about what they do. And the opportunities that they're finding are tremendous, right? One of the biggest things that we had as feedback was, well, we know our clients. We have all their lines of business. I wish we did. We would be in a wonderful place. But it's funny because after that first week, the amount of people that would come to me and say, I just got the opportunity to quote 3 more policies for this client, or this client just had this conversation with me and they were thankful and they asked, if I could talk with their friend. Their friends never had a conversation like this. And so I think we forget that we are the experts.
Yeah.
And we can't expect our clients to know what we know. That would put us out of work. And so we need to remember that. And this allows the account managers to be that again. And on top of it, build that relationship, right? We are in an industry where relationships matter. And if we are not continuing to fuel that relationship in some way or the other, we're losing our clients to somebody else. And this allows us to get back to the bare bones basics of who is your client, what are their needs, and do we best protect every piece of their need and their portfolio. So you hear no from time to time, but it's funny the amount of times the client then will call you back and be like, you know what, we talked about this. And after dwelling on it and thinking about it, I would love to see a quote for that. So
Yeah. And I think when we talk about renewal reviews, people really get focused on like, oh, that's service. And I always say that this is actually a huge growth strategy if you're following the right procedure. But something you said earlier, I think sometimes we get a little nervous because it is a bit of a skilled conversation having a renewal review. And we dealt with this in both areas where we were a little surprised. Maybe sometimes people didn't really know the coverage. They knew the transaction, they knew how to change a vehicle, but I think the development of the skill set of explaining why you need different auto liability, explaining why you need more water, sewer backup is something that either we haven't done in a long time because of the conditions. I'm not blaming anybody. I just think the last 5 years have been an anomaly in the insurance ecosystem. and we've talked about it a lot of like quizzing them on coverages, getting them to understand it. There's a second part of education that no matter what job they do, even if they're just taking payments, they still need to have some coverage depth and experience. And maybe you could share a little bit about how did you develop the team, maybe from just I do these transactions to I guide and educate, and knowing that that's not something that you could just kind of like take a pill, right? And be like, boom, coverage.
Right. Well, Kelly, I think a lot of that came from the support that you guys provided to us as well, right? So we had like the coverage, the wheel of coverage, which was amazing because I think that's when at first we realized, wow, we unearthed
There's some
a
bigger
larger
issues.
issue. Yes, we unearthed a larger issue than we realized. And it was good though, right? Because like you said, conditions changed. We were reactive. We weren't proactive. We weren't listening to what our carriers were offering and what benefited us with working with that carrier, right? So we kind of stepped away from what coverages were available because we were just flying by the seat of our pants. And so doing that wheel of coverage with our team made all of them realize I need to dig into this a little bit more. So through role playing of phone calls with them, as funny and as much as they hated it, it made them more comfortable because it was their teammates that were challenging them. And they felt as though, okay, if I can explain this to you in this very uncomfortable, awkward situation with all of my peers watching me, I can do this on a phone with somebody who really doesn't know what that is. So between the role playing, between listening to the phone calls as well, right? And hearing and letting them listen to it as well and saying, "Oh, I really just glazed over that. I could have gone into a deeper understanding and explanation with them." So I think the way that we helped our team realize it was just letting them listen, supporting their peers, and then utilizing the coverage sheet that you guys had as a way of their learning and their further development. Our team's always asking, how do I develop myself? How can I learn more? And yes, they can reach on their carriers, but they have to know what they're asking for. And so all of those three things allowed our team to really step up to the plate, and their confidence level increased dramatically. They go into the calls now, and it's funny to watch them from the beginning of when we started this to now because they're a whole different person.
Yeah.
Um, they're back to loving what they do
Yeah.
because they're getting to talk about what they love. They still laugh and they're like, "Man, I really do hate when we do the role plays, but it does be better." And it forces me to come prepared. So if anything, it's just a necessary evil and something that helps them realize they can support each other too. And they're all in the same boat.
Yeah, I always tell people, nobody likes burpees, but they work. Nobody likes role playing, but it works. So, like,
Yeah.
you just have to identify who cares, it works. Like,
Yeah.
just get in it and do it. And I think that, I want to just kind of unpack to like, we sort of take a crawl, walk, run approach. I think a lot of people feel, and a lot of managers I see in the team, it's like, okay, on day one, I have to be perfect. I'm like, no, you have a 6 month journey. And I really believe it takes 6 months. Some people get it quicker, some people take a little bit longer.
Yeah.
But I'm like, we have a 6 month journey. And I say, like, crawl is you just got to get the wiggles out and get into somewhat of a routine. Walk is now we have to do this at scale. We have to reach out to as many people as we can based on what the leader sets as the goal. And then run is we have to really optimize these accounts, right? And that's always something in insurance I always giggle at because I think, especially service people, are like, I must be perfect on day one. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, if I go to France and I don't know French, I'm not going to order coffee really well on day one. Like let go, Elsa it, let it go, like take that off, right? But I'd love for you maybe to share, like, to other leaders out there, how can you really, there's two sides of this coin. There's holding them accountable because there are people out there that will avoid this and resist and
Yeah.
push the leaders' boundaries to say, I'm busy. I got busy. This happened. That happened. Like they're very good at selling you on why they can't do renewal calls. Selling umbrellas, not so good. And then the other half is how do you really pour into them, believe for them, encourage them when they're like even just having like baby steps in the right direction? I think you did that really well. So I'd love for you to share your approach on that to other leaders.
Yeah. So you definitely get both sides of the coin during the process. I think the biggest thing is knowing that it is a crawl to walk to run process, right? And that was important for us. So setting realistic goals, reminding people you're not going to be perfect at this at the beginning, and it's okay to not be perfect. Just getting through the form, just making that first call is a celebration. So what we did is we set milestones for our team, right? And we made sure that everybody was in this group chat because we weren't all within the same office.
Yeah.
And what we did is after their first call, they put it in the chat that they completed their first call. Everybody celebrated it. They got to tell us what went well, what brick wall did they hit. We laughed about it. We celebrated it, but it encouraged them that, okay, if I could do it once, I can do it again. And then in one-on-ones that I had with them, we continued those conversations. So we would look at the numbers because, of course, we had to hold them accountable to the goals, right? But if we were seeing the progress we were needing to see, we could then dig into those conversations a little bit deeper and get over what is holding you back, right? What's holding you from taking that next step now, right? Rather than just making through the calls, how do we get to that running phase now that we're ready to scale? And it allowed us to really understand who our individuals were. Some had strengths in one area where others had strengths in a different area. So we learned more about our team, but we also learned about what motivated them. And I think that's important when you enter into something as big as this, right? This is a necessity. This is something that we had to take on in order to continue to grow in our department. And so we found what motivated them and we continued to push them. We celebrated the small wins. We reiterated your moment of raise your hand when you need it, because there were a lot of times they came up against things that were out of their control. And rather than be punished because you weren't hitting your numbers, we wanted them to take care of what was in front of them.
Yeah.
So I think what's important as a leader is you have to listen to your team. You have to take pulse checks. But then when you notice somebody is feeding you the lies and the excuses, you have to be ready to take action. And the reason why is because the team actually appreciates that as well.
Mhm.
My team gets really excited to actually see their metrics and see how many calls are made, because at the beginning, they didn't believe they were going to do it. And when we share it out now in our weekly call and we're like, hey, we're at, 92% of our calls, they all kind of gasp because they're like, wait,
Yeah,
you think everybody actually is doing their job and doing this? And I'm like, yeah, they are, because this is what we're supposed to be doing. And so they're holding each other accountable because we're holding them accountable. So I think you have to take it both ways. What motivates your team? How do you celebrate with them? How do you laugh about the instances that they didn't think they would be able to overcome? But then how do you also hold those that are not doing it accountable to it as well? And so we had to find that fine line. And it really comes from doing it as a team, but then also having the individual one-on-one conversations. And as a leadership team, knowing this is what the bare minimum is and this is why.
Yeah, I love that. And I think also, really kind of unpacking, hey, we have one leader that I always reference, and when his team wasn't making his calls, he would just show up at their desk with a cup of coffee and say, "Guess what we're going to do right now?" And he's like, "And if you don't want me to come do this every week, we're just going to get our calls done every week." And just having like, "No, you don't need to sit with me." It's like, "No, I do, because you're not making the calls. So I'm here and I'm going to sit right here until we make them."
Yeah.
And that was just like enough of a like, oh, I don't really want my manager sitting with me for 2 hours today to be like, I get it. What is worse? Like, kind of like, is it worse to sit or is it worse just to make these calls? And I always tell you, you have to believe in it for them, because account managers by nature can see like an inch in front of their face. Like, I swear, like they get
Correct.
so caught up. I got these activities and this and this and this. And this seems like this luxury item to call people,
Yeah.
but I always remind everybody that after 60 days, all this in front of you goes way less, because, when you're failing to prepare, you have to repair a lot of things.
Yeah.
And that's the mentality that everybody's been in. So as we conclude today, is there like one big tip you have for a leader that's just embarking this now that you've done it not once, but twice?
Um, Embrace the process, jump in fully, but ask questions when you're not sure the next step to take with your team, and lean on Kelly's team for support. I
Yeah, we've
think
done
that's
it a
the
lot.
biggest thing. Yeah, we do. Yeah.
We've done
Those
we've done
those radio calls,
situations.
yeah.
Yeah.
are what got us through it. But I think that's the biggest thing. And then celebrate with your team. It is a lot for them to take on, and the celebration has to happen along each little like win that they have. So
I think that's really good. And I'd also just say this, like, I think when Jen says ask questions, like read the temperature. Like if you have half the team out with the flu, you can modify and say, guys, just make 2 calls a day. We got to, and I say this a lot in the revised course. I say the hardest thing is you can't get your team out of the habit of doing it. It's like if you get sick and you don't go to the gym, the first time you go back to the gym, you're like, oh my gosh, this is so hard. Where if you just went and just walked on the treadmill or just did something, getting back in is so much easier. So even if it's just everybody make 1 call a day, send 1 email, whatever's going on, you're short staffed, the flu, office is closed because there's a power outage. Try to keep everybody just in the habit of doing it. So when it turns back on, you don't have to restart the entire situation at hand.
couldn't agree more.
Awesome. Well, Jen, thank you for your guidance and wisdom. You have just imparted lots of good details to other leaders out there. And, if anybody has any questions, just go to the chat or into the course and we'll be here to answer them. So thank you, Jen.
Thank you, Kelly.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that. It is so fun giving you guys tips and tricks every single, week out there. Remember, you can find us on social media for updates. You can like or comment on this podcast or video, and we're here for you. And check out our website. There's a ton of tools. We have over 1,000 blogs on our website. We have over 1,000 videos on YouTube. You can search and find answers to your top questions. But also, if you need a little bit more help, you want a best friend that's there cheerleading for you, giving you the guidance that you need, and being there on some of those tough days, let us know. We'd love to meet your agency and learn if we're a good fit. All right, signing off. Go sell insurance.